gentlemen, would you like to have a word, or would you like Conrad to have a word?
Get Conrad up first.
Is really the sponsor of this evening. He works. Are you in charge of digital at Shelter?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Shelter.
Fantastic. So I'll hand you over to Conrad to say a few words, and then we'll move over to our next speaker.
So basically, I'm just going to be a bit of filler before Alan comes. He's got his thumbs up. So yeah, hi everybody. So my name's Conrad, and I look after Shelter Scotland's digital. So this hackathon really came about because we really thought that sometimes when you work for a charity, you can get really bogged down and continually work on the same thing day in and day out. Obviously, it's a really, really important thing. We're trying to solve homelessness after all. You know, I was really aware that we didn't really ever take the time to kind of ask you guys what you thought we should be doing, and what you thought, what kind of products or services we can you guys can put together or brainstorm with us, so that we can, you know, solve this issue of bad housing in Scotland and homelessness. So anyway, that's how this weekend came about. So I think we've got around 30 or so. If you're a participant at the hackathon, do you want to raise your hand? So yeah, an amazing amount, a great amount of people here, and obviously thank you so much for coming along. So we'll be, you know, working together over the weekend just to kind of see if we can come up with some innovative solutions to look at how we can, you know, make life better for renters, homeowners, people who are in social housing, and landlords in Scotland. So obviously you guys are all on Twitter, of course you are. Our Twitter wall isn't working at the moment for some reason, but I was going to refer to it. I'm going to refer to our fictional Twitter wall around the back. So can you grab your phone, not right now, but if you can right now, of course as well, but during the next hour or so, and just tweet us and the participants using the, what's the hashtag on? Shelter Scott PF hashtag. It's everywhere. And I want to know, what does home mean to you? So it could be a few words. Just, you know, if you think about home, if you think about your own home, if you think about if you're not living in Scotland permanently, if you're living elsewhere, what does home mean to you? I think it'll really help the participants and us just to kind of, you know, help us frame kind of what we're going to be doing over the weekend. Yeah, that's all for me. Al? Cheers. Thank you so much for coming.
And I have literally no idea what I'm going to say until I say it, probably. So thank you all very much for coming along. This is the first hackathon actually we've run this year. The last was Product Forge 4 on the theme of digital participation. And as part of that event, we looked at housing and homelessness, and Shelter kindly sponsored part of that event. And the winning team went on to work on a project on that topic, and there was a huge amount of interest in it, and we thought, you know, leading on from that, it would be absolutely amazing to do something just specifically on this topic. So thank you very much for coming along. For those of you who are joining us as part of the hackathon, you're going to be watching some talks to give you some inspiration. We'll be doing some speed networking later. You'll hear from service users from Shelter, from people who are working within the organization. We'll be doing some team formation, and we're going to be getting you all set up so you can be hacking over the weekend. The venue's going to be open 24 hours. You can stay as late as you want. You can leave as early as you want. It's up to you. And we're really looking forward to seeing what the outcomes are going to be on Sunday. If you've got any questions, just approach me or one of the team. So we're all wearing Product Forge t-shirts, so put your hand up if you're Team Product Forge, and Team Shelter as well. Put your hands up if you're a mentor in the room. So approach any of these guys if you've got any questions, and enjoy the rest of the show, and you'll hear a lot more from me a bit later on. Cheers.
Thanks, Alan. Round of applause. Excellent. I'm sure it's going to be a really fun evening. Well, weekend, actually. Are you guys going to be sleeping or not? Sleeping loud, or you got to work the whole way through? I guess you'll get briefed on that later. Okay, we have another speaker from Shelter, Adam, are you ready? Adam Lang. Thank you.
We don't have a clicker, but if you do, just do the right button.
Sure.
On the chairs.
No clicker. Nobody brought a clicker. Hackathon. Hello, my name is Adam Lang. I'm the Head of Communications and Policy at Shelter Scotland, which I suppose broadly means that all the fantastic work that my colleagues in the digital team, of which Conrad leads, I get to have some modicum of saying, that was all part of my plan. I did that. I'm genuinely really excited to be here. Most of the conferences and events that I attend are not this interesting, to say the least. So I'm really chuffed to be here. Thank you for inviting me along. There is throughout the room here, and I believe throughout the weekend, there's an abundance of sort of statistical information about the challenge and the scale of the problem of homelessness and bad housing in Scotland. So I've tried to gear my presentation, and I do tend to ramble a bit, so just throw things at me, away from the stuff that's already here, to give you a bit of an oversight about Shelter Scotland and how we perceive our take on some of the harder stats that are scattered around the room here. Oh, good start. Very briefly then, just a very quick bit of context setting in terms of who we are. We've been around since 1968. Our sort of sister organisation, Shelter, was formed in 1966 in England. Shelter Scotland specifically and distinctly was set up in 1968 because there's a whole lot of differences both in the legislation and in the local challenges about the housing market in Scotland as compared to England. The quote that's up there is taken from our original legal founding principles, our charitable objectives, and I put them up deliberately because I think they're amazing, and I think more people should write like that generally. But we were created to play a creative part in the life of the nation by relieving human suffering, irrespective of colour, creed, or class, and to relieve hardship and distress among homeless people and among those in need living in adverse housing conditions. I think that is a fantastic mission statement for any organisation. It's one that I'm incredibly proud to work for and towards at Shelter Scotland. Thank you. I didn't write it. I wish I did write it. I didn't write that. A lot of people don't necessarily understand the way Shelter Scotland's structured or what we do. We do this sort of tracking thing annually about what people believe we do, and 90% of people we survey think that we run soup kitchens or do actually build or provide sheltered housing. We actually do neither of those things. We provide fantastic frontline services and support and advice for people who are homeless or badly housed. And the way we conceptualise that is helping people here today in housing need. And the other side of what we do, the bit that I'm responsible for, is we campaign for change so that the problems people face today are improved tomorrow. And I'll go on just to sort of explain a little bit about that. But it isn't actually what a lot of people think that we do. And we have lots of internal discussions about how far we should go in correcting those perceptions. We're broadly split into three core functions. We have a services division. Some of my colleagues from services are here. They do incredible work dealing every day with people who are at the very sharp end of Scotland's housing crisis, and I couldn't encourage you enough to speak to them and to hear the testaments and stories that they have about how completely crap it is for people who are suffering from our housing crisis. And don't ever let anyone tell you that it isn't a housing crisis. Mostly politicians will try and tell you that it isn't a housing crisis. Go and sit on our helpline for half an hour, or go and hang out with any of our service advisors. You will be left in no shadow of a doubt that it is a housing crisis. So we're split into services, communications and policy, which I can talk to here today, which is broadly comprised of the components you see below there. With the digital team, I would draw particular attention to. Most of my colleagues from the digital team are here today, Conrad, Keith, Tom and James. Campaigns and public affairs, which is where we turn all the information we gather from our digital resources, from our colleagues and services, from our policy insight into things to try and drive change. And we have another bit about various projects that we run at times. We also have a training arm within Shelter Scotland, which is relatively new, about trying to improve practice for practitioners and local authorities and other service providers. Just very briefly, we enjoy a really positive public profile. It's something that's very important to us, that we work very hard to maintain our trust, to maintain our standing. We are a charity. We rely on the kindness and goodwill of others to support what we do, donations from on the street, and from a whole variety of other ways. So it's very important to us that we always monitor and track how well people perceive us to be doing our job. Our impact from our services side of our organisation, and this is where the stats you see around the room about the statistical situation nationally in Scotland translates into what we see on a daily basis, and these are the stats from the last year, roughly. A couple of them are wrong, which I'm sure I'll hear about later. We dealt with about 17,000 cases last year. That's people who came to our services, 17,000 cases. We don't identify them as 17,000 individuals because sometimes somebody might come once and come back, of which 12,000 came through our free national helpline. We offer that as a universal service to anyone in Scotland. If you're at a point of crisis or if you need support, our free national helpline is available to you. 46% of the calls to that helpline came from people in the private rented sector. I think that's a very important point to make, because only 14% of all households in Scotland live in the private rented sector, so it is vastly disproportionate in terms of how we hear about problems from that part of Scotland's tenancy mix. Some of the other problems we deal with from the non-helpline side, which is where our casework kicks in, it's some of the more intense and time intensive cases around evictions, possessions, homelessness, debt, and struggling with household costs. Things, hopefully, that should be make sense, and there should be a logic to that. We also recently, about 18 months ago, set up what was for us at the time a very innovative form of support, which is our online chat. It's a pop-up live chat support that if you're on our website, you'll be prompted to engage with. We delivered 4,000 live chats sessions last year, and the really fantastic thing for us about that is it delivered by volunteers. And with, not that everything's about money, but what that means for us is it's an incredibly cost-effective way for us to help more people, and that's ultimately what it's all about for us. So from a communications and policy point of view, what's our impact? Because that's the other big pillar of what we do. We have about 10,000, just under 10,000 registered campaign supporters who have given us their information and support what we do. Last year we produced, researched, published and uploaded 41 policy documents or policy papers to our digital policy library. We also do the more mundane stuff of physically distributing that to key audiences and so on. We had a direct influence on 4, in particular, major bits of legislation that went through the Scottish Parliament last year on land reform,